This Steve Jones Show podcast is now loading. The Steve Jones Show podcast is presented by Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, Brewers Outlet, and NIL Game Changers. Bringing you an in-depth look at Penn State sports and more. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. The Steve Jones Show is presented by NIL Game Changers, Sunbury Motor Company, Purdy Insurance, and Brewers Outlet. Now from the Sunbury Motors studio, here's Steve Jones.
And this half hour brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf, online at sunburymotors.com. I can personally attest to the great experience there in terms of the inventory available, the ability to work with people, the ability of them to work with you, and to give you the best buying experience possible. That's all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia. Routes 11 and 15, Hummels Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. And, of course, a great service department that takes care of routine, difficult, whatever it may be. Tuesdays with Neal. That's what we have on the docket this half hour. And, sir, it is always a pleasure. Welcome.
Well, pleasure is all mine, as always. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about Sunday Ticket. So the NFL ordered to pay $4.7 billion in damages to the residential class and $96 million in damages to the commercial class, which means they could end up liable for $14.4 billion. Wow. So let's start with, what was your thought when you saw the result of it?
Honestly, my first thought was more the money that they would end up having to charge each team. I was curious how the union would react to that as far as the salary cap would be concerned, because a literal interpretation of it would be, in that sense, I would think anyway, you can argue that is a payout which would come out of their revenue. It would be really tough for any of those teams to pay out that much in one sitting. While I understand that they're billion-dollar valuated companies, they're not that liquid. They only collect money for 3 months out of the year, and then a balloon payment for the revenue sharing. And they make plenty of cash. I'm not suggesting that they don't, but that money is usually invested pretty quickly. It's not like they have all of it sitting around. If you're the Dallas Cowboys, for example, you're looking at 3 players with significant bonuses coming from somebody in their eyes, preferably them: Dak Prescott, Micah Parsons, and CeeDee Lamb. They have to have all of that cash up front. If they have to pay out their share of this settlement, going to have the money to pay those players. I know that seems crazy that Jerry Jones wouldn't have the money, but $450 million is far more than what they would pay if they signed all 3 of them, which they're probably not going to do. So the ramifications of it, I think, are a little bit more steep than people think that they are. But that said, it's also the initial amount. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what they're going to land on, and how it is that they'll handle the payment of it, I think, is a different matter. If it's X over, Y amount of years, they'll have to pay out something for sure. I'm curious where it's going to go logistically within the league, within each team, how they're going to kind of dole that out, or if it's just going to be really that they'll knock it down to one rev share payment that teams won't get, and how that will ultimately affect spending, because there's a difference between that revenue number and then the bottom line of what they're spending, which is going to mean there's an off season where I'm sure Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk, who's been all over this from the beginning, will accuse them all of colluding and not paying out in free agency in a year to follow all of this. Wouldn't surprise me if that's kind of where it all goes. But it's rare in the sense that they don't lose class action suits. They don't pay out this much money that we are aware of. Anything that they settle, we obviously wouldn't know. But I think it's safe to say they haven't spent that much money on anything. Any one particular team or the league has not put out that much cash before. And, I don't want to say I was surprised by the ruling. All of it is so much that I don't know if I'm the best expert to speak on it, but it definitely was like, wow, I can't believe that didn't go in their favor. I can't believe it was seen as that much. The NFL's not done, though. Let's see how Jeff Pash reacts to all of it, what it is they're going to pull out to get out of paying that much money. I'm sure that the final amount will be reduced quite a bit.
The post-trial motions will be heard July 31st. And there's going to be a motion to set aside the verdict. Say it is not set aside, then the NFL is going to appeal to the Ninth Circuit Court. So this is still part of the process here. But it took the jury 5 hours to deliberate. It's a product that has so much, quote, over-the-air product. Now cable, of course, but the cable, it feels like over-the-air. I know you're paying your cable bill. But do you think that played a role? I mean, I'm trying to guess here. When you got 8 people sitting, it was not a 12-person jury, it was 8. 8 people sitting there like, yeah, I don't feel like paying through the nose for this. The NFL's like, you wonder if that enters into it.
I would think to a fundamental level, I think that's what it would have to be. I said in this space a couple weeks ago, the NFL wants to treat it like a premium product, and I can understand why they would want to do that.
Sure.
I didn't think that it would not be allowable for them to do that. At the same time, I think, my car could have been made a lot cheaper than it was. Do I want them to do that is a different question.
Right.
So I think I was kind of surprised. But as you said, I think with 8 people on the jury, there are 8 people that are going to say, well, you make a bunch of money. You didn't need to charge this much. You're liable for it. I did not anticipate that would have been the result. At the same time, though, as a user of NFL Ticket, I don't want them to cut corners for the cost for whatever it is. I mean, it was kind of buggy anyway. I felt, and I've said this before too, YouTube TV was a pretty good product. Overall, it was a good experience at a price that I thought was probably about right for the market for what it is. I think anybody can do something cheaper. Ultimately, it's who you're comfortable doing business with that ultimately matters, in my opinion. So, in that, maybe it was off a little bit over a large amount of time. Maybe they could have cut out a little bit more, but in the end, I think it damages the product, and I don't think that the jury would have seen it that way in this particular case. So, obviously they didn't, but I feel probably the NFL is a little bit more surprised than not that it didn't go in their favor for that reason. It's really interesting. There's a lot that goes into this.
Yeah, because normally the NFL is, when it comes to media, is as savvy as an organization as there is out there. And other professional leagues aren't quite, but they're doing better. I mean, Major League Baseball, the NBA, and the NHL, they have a similar system, except they market their packages on multiple distributors, and they share in the revenue per subscriber instead of receiving an outright rights fee. See, that I think that's one of the differences here as well, is the number.
Yeah, I think that that model is also something that was put in place in the NFL a long time ago versus the NBA. Well, MLB is probably the better example of it, on a more extreme end. But I think the NBA kind of noticed that as the third of the big three to kind of, really break into it. They weren't a huge product until the 80s. In that, you can see that there's room to share revenue as well as kind of make your own brand and let the players perhaps have, a bit bigger of a chunk of it all. And the rights broadcast being at that point, certainly, the height of Bird and Magic in the early 80s, 84, 85, 86, in that time period, the TV deals went through the roof, and that's where money was going as far as entertainment and society was. TV was hugely lucrative, and I think the NBA had that in its DNA to the point where they were first into streaming. They got a lot more into social media. The NFL was late to the game in all those things because they were kind of set in their ways. And I think that casts them in a negative light as well. They could have tried to find different ways to, I don't want to say dilute, but diversify where their product is going, therefore, perhaps charge a little bit less. I think that probably worked against them a little bit as well. If you look at it from a common person's perspective now, why isn't your product across everything? I see NBC on 5 different things. Why aren't you like that? To your point, I think that does ultimately, it would cast doubt that they really tried to, make a reasonable effort to keep the price down. They would have had more opportunity to do that. But as you and I have discussed many times, maybe this is why they're dialing into Netflix, Amazon Prime. Obviously, they went to YouTube TV already. They are now diversifying. It's just that it's 2023 when they really started doing all this. The NBA has been doing it for 10 years. The NBA was probably one of the bigger case studies across the entire market as far as streaming goes. They taught people a lot on how to be able to do that. So in comparison to their peers, I think they were the least flexible and the least ready to change. And with that, I think ultimately it cost them, but I don't think they expected it to.
And now talking about cost, the Jaguars are going to renovate their stadium. And same story with Carolina. The cost in Charlotte is $800 million. The cost in Jacksonville is $1.4 billion along the way. But the teams are not the ones picking up the majority of the tab on it. When you look at what cities are doing and states are doing when it comes to stadiums, whether it's building them or renovating them, what is your thought as to what the league and the team's responsibilities should be?
This covers a lot of different things. I've talked to a lot of lawyers and team personnel about this. I find it incredibly fascinating. But when you no longer have the LA chip, you no longer have the Vegas chip, how are you looking to expand? Nobody takes London seriously. And the only team that may have possibly considered it seriously was the Jaguars. And to some degree, I think the Jaguars held on to that in an effort to make sure that their stadium was renovated, rebuilt, whatever you want to do with it. I don't know if you've ever been out there, but it's on a point at the edge of the city in Jacksonville.
Yeah, no, I've broadcast a Gator Bowl game. I did a Penn State Georgia game there.
Okay, and the entire stadium is built for the Florida Georgia game. That was really the main appeal to it, but it didn't end up staying there. They've moved it around. There's not really attendance for them that's significant. In fact, obviously, I think in Jacksonville, both the Florida Gators and the Georgia Bulldogs are bigger than the Jaguars are. They would love to get more of those games, but that's obviously not going to work for them. Mm-hmm. They wanted something long-term. They wanted a long-term investment. You weren't sure if it was going to happen in Jacksonville after the expiration of the Florida-Georgia game being played at that stadium. I forget what it's called nowadays. Everbank is what I'm stuck on. Even go back to Alltel when it first came out.
Yeah, it's still Everbank. Yep.
Everbank. Okay. You're able to get a good market there, and the stadium, as far as the layout goes, where it is, it's built for college football.
Yeah.
It's smack dab in the middle of 500 acres of tailgate space.
Yep.
Literally what it is. It's interesting in that way. I don't think they wanted to leave that because they're not getting that anywhere in London. There's no way that would happen. That's assuming the league would even want to do all of that just for one team being able to relocate. But getting back to my point, what other card do they have to play? Where are they going to go? So now I think that the savvy and perhaps less enthused about tax dollars going to fund stadiums. From a politician's perspective, they can see that the NFL doesn't really have the stick it used to have. You know, we've talked about this in Minnesota, where I am now. The NFL basically came in and quietly bullied the Minnesota State Legislature to get U.S. Bank Stadium built. And that's not long after baseball kind of did the same thing a couple of years before that for a new Twin Stadium. You saw them move out of St. Louis over a stadium issue. You saw Vegas, all but beg the Raiders to move there. All of those chips are played. Where else are they going to go? I don't know how much a local community needs to worry about a team forcing themselves to leave. You know, now look at what, in this different market I understand, but just 10,000-foot level comparison, look at what the Oakland A's have to do and look at what they've had to do to get out of Oakland. I mean, It took them forever to do that. Yeah. And that's not an NFL situation at all, you know. I don't think the next generation of voters are really going to go for this so much. So it makes you wonder if there's not ideas in mind of other communities, maybe spending a little bit less, you know. But I think the next wave of owners, the next generation of their tenure as owners, is going to come with them spending more money on stadiums if that's what they want. I don't think they're going to be able to get tax dollars to fund everything. And the reason I bring that up is Heinz Field isn't new anymore. I know people in Pittsburgh are going to say it's new for another 20 years, but it's not new anymore. No. They're not, you know, I'm not saying get rid of Heinz Field. It's fine, but I don't think, you know, within our lifetime, it's a subject that's not going to come up. So to some degree, you have to start wondering about areas like that, you know. How many? I'm sure you've been to Lambeau at some point, but that's, you know, it's historic, it's nice and everything. It's not, it's antiquated for old stadiums. It makes you wonder what's going to happen with that. How much money are they going to have to chip in for that? Obviously the issue in Chicago, they're looking to get out of Chicago completely, and I'm pretty sure that's the only way they're going to be able to do it. But the Catskills are going to have to pay a chunk of that to be able to do it, a lot less than they used to. You're not going to move the Chicago Bears. Even if you did, where are you going to move them to? Fargo, North Dakota? I don't think there is a major city anymore that's interested in putting up that much money to absorb a team in that way. If it's now going to be $2.5–3 billion to build it, you know, a team without that franchise right now, there's just not many of them left. So I wonder where all of that is going, and the next generation is going to be really interesting to see how and where all that will play out.
Well, let's give you a smaller example, much, much smaller. That's Eugene, Oregon. The Eugene Emeralds are an affiliate of the San Francisco Giants. Now, Major League Baseball's mandated how Major League ballparks how minor league ballparks need to be structured. So Eugene doesn't meet the standards. So they put it up to vote because they wanted $15 to $25 million to sink into the ballpark to get it to the standard Major League Baseball wants. And Lane County voted it down by a 67 to 33% margin. They said, nope, let them move. They did. That's a smaller example, but that goes to your point about how people may be feeling about these things.
Yeah, I think, you know, there are two parts to a no vote there, too. I think there's, no, I'm not interested in this. I don't want this. That's a lot of money to spend. Maybe that's like 4 or 5 parts. But I also think there's a contingent that says, we're calling your bluff. You're not going to go anywhere. You can't. Right. You're stuck here. It's going to cost you even more to move elsewhere. So let's talk about something else. I say that because it's the Cincinnati example. This is where the Bengals are going to end up being. And I think the Bengals are the case study of that, in that it took them a lot to get a stadium built. That was not an easy situation for them. They aren't a legacy NFL franchise. Right. They've had some nice times lately, but it's not like this is a franchise of phenomenal historic moments every year. So you don't quite have the fan base in place to really support that. And you're doing it in a town with a legacy baseball team, without a basketball team. So I think Cincinnati knows you're not really going anywhere. We're going to work with what we have here, and that's happened a couple times to them. There seems to be some type of simmering political issues surrounding the funding of the stadium on a yearly basis out there. I don't live out there. I just happen to follow the situation. At the same time, to threaten to move, you really need to have a high-profile place, a can't-miss type of opportunity for you to want to do that. And I don't think that exists for Cincinnati, and I don't think that exists anywhere for the NFL. So, yeah, I think the value of it is going to ultimately here go down. I don't think the lawsuit helps that. I don't think the concussion issue of the previous decade, you might even say that the previous generation now, is going to help any of that. The next wave of people are not going to just pass, $1 taxes on gas or whatever it is for the local area, slot machines being put a bunch of places to generate revenue to pay for stadiums. Right. They're starting to see that, if you want to do that, we can talk about another issue that we more support than the team coming in here, just because everybody now is in NFL markets has heard it. They've played through it. The people living there have spent on it. I don't know if the NFL is going to be able to get away with it the way they used to.
So you're saying Bismarck is not an option? All right.
You obviously haven't been to Bismarck.
Silly me.
Exactly.
My friend, great, happy, safe 4th. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week.
You guys as well. Thanks for having me.
Neal Coolong. Half hour brought to you by our great friends at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com.
Game time or just fun time, doesn't matter what time it is, because it's Brewers Outlet time. The beverage supermarket has the area's largest beer selection, imports, microbrews, ciders, and domestics. Pick from over 100 ice-cold 12-packs and dozens of 24-ounce singles. Soda, snacks, hot sauces, fresh roasted peanuts. Make it one-stop party shopping, and don't forget the pickle bar. So whatever you're celebrating or just doing it up, Brewers Outlet, Reagan Street, Sunbury wants to see you. And thank you for your years of patronage.
You want a unique way to display your brand. You need a team of seasoned experts to work with. You want to reach customers who buy. You want NIL Game Changers, a versatile consulting agency powered by former student athletes and coaches who work as NIL sports agents. NIL Game Changers will help you build powerful relationships with customers through compelling stories, with student athlete influencers as your leading edge. Finally, we'll equip you with the right media to drive your success home. NILGameChangers.org, building meaningful relationships with your customers.
When car repairs get difficult.
Well, I just don't know.
Me neither.
We get good. Sunbury Motors. More than quality new and used cars, Sunbury Motors specializes in complicated auto repair diagnosis. They can handle intricate repairs and even complete auto body with service open Monday through Friday, 7 till 4. And Sunbury Motors has made simple repairs easy. Maintaining your vehicle is necessary. Finding the time to do it is difficult. Welcome to Sunbury Motors Quick Lane. Just walk in or call ahead. Relax in their remodeled waiting room with Wi-Fi, beverages, and snacks. While Sunbury Motors factory-trained techs take care of your oil change, tire alignments, brakes, and inspections. Quick Lane, 6:30 to 6 Monday through Friday, Saturday 6:30 till 2. Sunbury Motors, Ford and Hyundai, North 4th Street, Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. We take the out of auto repair.
Hi, this is Season. For over 100 years, the Purdy Insurance Agency has been protecting families and businesses of the greater Susquehanna Valley and beyond. With the experience of our trained and knowledgeable staff, you can rest assured that your needs will be evaluated and met by some of the industry's best representatives. No matter what your insurance needs are, call Purdy Insurance today at 570-286-5855. Visit our website at purdyinsurance.com or check us out on Facebook to see what we can do for you.
Hi, this is Steve Jones. Join me on Wednesday, August 7th at the Susquehanna Valley Country Club for the 33rd Annual Truman H. Purdy Memorial Golf Tournament. Get your 4-person scramble team together to support the Greater Susquehanna Valley YMCA. There are loads of prizes, including hole-in-one closest to the flag, longest drive, and more. Call 570-556-4191 to get registered and then join me and Sunbury Broadcasting Corporation Wednesday, August 7th at the 33rd Annual Truman H. Purdy Memorial Golf Tournament.